Hi, I'm Steve Gedeon, Professor of Entrepreneurship at the Ted Rogers School of Management in Ryerson University, which is in Toronto, Canada. I'm also a docent at the Ostfalia Hochschule für angewandte Wissenschaften in Braunschweig and Wolfenbüttel in central Germany, and working with a variety of other entrepreneurship universities. Today I'm going to be talking about value chain management, and later on in this course I'm going to be talking about Module 5.6, which is something to do with failure and reprogramming failure and resiliency. And I'll give you more details about my background and coaching experience and how many companies I've started, how long I've been an entrepreneurship professor, and all that other kind of good stuff. But this is a dense topic, so let me jump right in. So first of all, before I can talk about how to manage your value chain, you have to know what a value chain is. So before we can manage it, we need to talk about the use of the value chain as a strategic development tool. So this is a tool like any other tool. It's a tool that you would use like Porter's 5 Forces or the Porter's 5 Generic Strategies or the Boston Consulting Group Matrix or the Space Matrix, GE Matrix, all those kinds of things. It's a strategy tool that helps you think about how to design your business. It helps you to figure out what your company does and what it should not be doing. And this is important because you can't do everything. And the more you can give to other people that have better expertise in things, the more that you can focus on your sustainable competitive advantage. So obviously, what you deliver to the customer includes everything from maybe the stuff that gets dug out of the ground to the packaging of your product that they see when they open it up. So there's this big, huge range of things that your company has to deliver. And that's your entire value chain. But you need to figure out what things in here you're really amazing at and which things you give to other people that are amazing at. So it's a way of thinking about what your company does and what it doesn't do. And it's also a way of thinking through what's really important to customers. Now, you probably have to do certain things that your customers don't care about. An example might be the electricity has to go on in your company when you flip the switch. When all your employees come into the work first thing in the morning and they turn the light switch on, the lights have to go on. Your company has to do that, but your customers don't care that the lights go on in your building. So there's a lot of things that a company has to do that don't actually deliver value to the customer. And that's one of the reasons why this is such a powerful tool, is it forces you to think through, here's all the stuff that we do, but here's a lot of stuff that the customer doesn't care about. We need to have employee agreements. But does the customer really care about the contract relationship between your company and its employees? Maybe the answer is yes. Maybe the employees are so important as a strategic tool. Your employees are such an important part of the value to customers that the contract with them is also important. But in many cases, nobody cares about the contract that you as the CEO of the business have to have between you, the corporate entity, and your employees. So it helps you to figure out what can be outsourced to other people and really what creates sustainable competitive advantage. And it works alongside other tools like, again, Porter's 5 Forces or the business model tool. So here's a standard generic textbook value chain. Stuff comes in. We call it inbound logistics. Stuff arrives at your factory. You have some kind of operations. Maybe you take these things, you reassemble them, you put them on a truck, you do marketing and sales, you sell them to your customers, and you have some kind of a service. So this is all the stuff that your company has to do. Stuff comes in the door, you do something, stuff goes out. You also have to do some other things too that aren't really on your value chain here. Like you have to have a procurement policy, you need a computer system so you can send emails, you have to hire and fire people, you need HR and operations management, you need legal, corporate governance, stuff like that. You do that stuff, but it's not really part of the value chain. Now this is what a textbook value chain looks like. But there's a lot of problems here. And very often, textbooks that we use really do a bad job of describing what a value chain is. Because what they fail to understand is, for example, some things that the company does that maybe you think are part of your value chain aren't really part of your value chain. And this is where it comes in as a strategic weapon. So let's say, for example, my company is Nike. Nike, they make shoes, they make golf clubs, they make shirts, they make hats, they make a lot of stuff. So Nike has to get stuff. Cloth comes in, inbound logistics, operations, you turn it into a shirt, you sew the little swoosh onto it, it gets shipped out, you have sales and marketing to your distribution channels and maybe service if people don't like the shirt that they bought. But let me ask you a question. This is a profound way to think about what a value chain is. Why is it that for Nike, marketing is part of the value chain? But why is it that for a company like FedEx, Federal Express, marketing is not part of the value chain? So think about that for a second. Both companies have to do marketing. They have to do it. People have to know who you are. And you've seen FedEx advertisements. You've seen Nike advertisements on television. But why is it that when Nike advertises at me, that adds value to the customer? But when FedEx markets at me, I do not derive any value from that. Now think about that for a second. When I see an advertisement from Nike and, I don't know, Tiger Woods is wearing my little swoosh, I, the consumer who own a Nike product with a little swoosh on it, I feel better about myself. I think, hey, look at me. I got the swoosh. I'm like Tiger Woods. I'm like Michael Jordan. I'm like, I don't know, another famous athlete that you've heard of. I'm like the guy who just won Wimbledon. I'm like the lady who just won the Open. And so every time that Nike markets at me, the value of every product that I already own from Nike goes up because I'm just that little bit sexier. Look at me, I got my swoosh. I'm cool. I might be over 50, I might be balding, I might be overweight, but hey, Michael Jordan wears the swoosh, I got the swoosh. The value of my shirt has increased. That's part of their value chain. But when I watch a FedEx commercial, does that make me feel better about using FedEx? Not really. I don't go down the street going, hey, look at me, I use FedEx. I'm cool. It doesn't happen. Yes, FedEx has to tell me that they exist. They have to have brand awareness, but that's not the same thing as adding value to the customer. So, why does marketing add value to the customer for Nike? Because marketing is part of the value of the product. Marketing does not add value for FedEx because it's just something that they have to do. So what this means in terms of managing their value chain, Nike has to really own their marketing. They need a high-level senior vice president at headquarters that says, I'm in charge of marketing, I'm in charge of making sure that if Tiger Woods has an affair, we cut him off. If some other guy just wins Wimbledon, the first male to win Wimbledon in 77 years, guess what? Within a week, that guy suddenly shows up on my TV screen. And so that's a strategic weapon for Nike to manage your marketing. But for FedEx, we have to be good at getting stuff on time. We have to be good at managing airplanes. We have to be good at getting stuff from A to B. We have to be good at IT systems. We have to be good at making sure that all those things happen. We can outsource marketing to an advertising agency. There. So now let's look at this again. We're back to this value chain again. Now, I'm going to suggest that this is a bad value chain for a fashion clothing company. Now, imagine you're a famous designer and you have some fashion clothing brand. I don't know, Tommy Hilfiger. Is this a good value chain for Tommy Hilfiger? What can be cut out of there? Does Tommy Hilfiger really have to worry about inbound logistics? You think when I go into a retail store that I care how that product got there on the shelf? Is inbound logistics a part of the value chain for Tommy Hilfiger? Probably not. Is operations part of it? Probably not. Outbound logistics? Probably not. I mean, the stuff has to be there on the shelf. And, when I go into a store and I'm a size large and I want to find, the right color with the right size, stuff has to be there. So I guess that's maybe adding value. So maybe we'll leave it on the chain just to make sure. Marketing and sales? Ooh, Tommy Hilfiger, probably sort of kind of like Nike. Maybe marketing deserves to be on there. Service? I don't know. I don't think I've ever taken one of my Tommy Hilfiger shirts back and demanded, oh, I'm missing a stitch or anything like that. But what's missing? What should be on there? And this is where strategic thinking comes in. So one thing you can do is take somebody else's value chain and cut it up and move things around. The other thing maybe you could do is start from a clean sheet of paper and say, I don't like anything to do with this value chain. I'm going to change the rules of the game. And this is, again, where some of the power of the value chain comes in. So let me give you a few different value chains. This is the only one you'll probably ever see in a textbook here. It's pretty boring. I don't think it's a particularly good value chain. Maybe it's good for certain companies, but for most companies, this is actually not a very good value chain. So I don't agree with most textbooks on this point. Let's look at another one. I'm going to look at stage of operations. Maybe this is an automotive manufacturer. You have to extract iron ore out of the ground. You have to turn that into steel. The steel has to be rolled into a big coil. The coil has to be shipped to the automotive manufacturer. The manufacturer has to stamp this into the hood of a car. The car hood has to be combined with the chassis. It all has to be stuck together. You then have to get this car somehow to the distribution channel and then the retail location where I go into the Ford dealership or the Hyundai dealership or the Mercedes-Benz or BMW dealership and buy a car. But let's think about this for a minute. Do I really care about the iron ore that was extracted out of the ground and what effect that has on the car? Well, maybe it does actually in a surprising way, because one thing we know about perception of quality by consumers is, when you close the door, it has to go thunk and sound just right. But how do you specify that door closes in a certain way, and how do you control your manufacturing operation so that the door closes and makes just the right sound? Or when I look at the hood of the car, that there's no waviness, that you want that beautiful, unblemished look. So actually making a car hood with the type of paint and the type of steel and the type of waviness and the type of perfection of manufacturing operation, actually automotive manufacturers kind of have to go all the way back to the way that the steel is processed, to the flatness of the type of sheet metal, to the way that the sheet metal is unrolled from the big coil, to whether they cut the end and the tail off of the coil. And so all that manufacturing stuff actually plays a role in when I go to the retail channel and I look at the car, that the hood looks just right, or the door sounds just right, or the smell is just right. So for some cars, maybe all this belongs on the value chain. For some cars, maybe design is more important, or maybe marketing is more important. I don't know what the right answer is, but what I can tell you is that some car manufacturers need all this stuff. Other car manufacturers do not need any of this stuff, and all they really need is marketing. So let me give you another one. Alteration of the value chain. This could be a consulting firm, for example, PwC, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, people like that. They obviously don't have inbound logistics, operations, and outbound logistics, but what they do have is a completely different value chain associated with finding out what the problems are, solving the problem, figuring out with the customer which choice to make over difficult things, how to execute, how to control, and all those kinds of things. So there's a lot of different types of value chains. Here's another one, for example, for a value network, such as LinkedIn or Facebook or a dating website. You have to promote the network. For example, if I've got a dating website and there's no women, guess what? Your dating network sucks. You need women. You have to promote the network. You got to get a lot of people on. Nobody's going to join Facebook if you don't have all of your friends on Facebook. And the value of the network increases the larger the size of the network. LinkedIn is only valuable if everybody else is on LinkedIn. So there's different, providing the services, infrastructure operations, different value chains are there for different reasons. So, how to design your value chain? I start by designing what my competitors' value chains look like. Trying to figure out how your value chain is different. Maybe removing part of the chain. What would happen if you eliminate several things? Maybe create 5 or 6 different versions of the value chain. Seeing if there's stuff that everybody else has in common, in which case if they're all doing it, I don't want to do it. I should outsource to them. Hey, maybe instead of them being my competitor, they can be my partner. I'm doing a part of the value chain that nobody else is doing. And so this is a way to develop keen strategic insights into what your company should be doing, what it shouldn't be competing on. I certainly wouldn't want to compete with FedEx, for example, on overnight delivery. I'd much rather just outsource that to FedEx. I don't want to run planes and all that kind of stuff. It's also sometimes instructive to ask other people who know nothing about your industry, and maybe even talk to your customers. What do you really care about? Now that you've designed your value chain, you have to implement your value chain. And we will do a deep dive on this module if there's demand for it, and we can help you with a variety of other things about implementing your value chain. But I wanted to say at least one thing. If you're a new company and you're trying to work with larger partners, you have to realize that as the little baby company dealing with these big companies, you're probably not very important to them. You're probably an annoyance to them. You think you're important. You think, I'm gonna grow and become really big, and I want you to stop what you're doing so that you can do my little thing. But most big partners will only see you as an annoyance, and you have to manage this issue, and that's gonna be an important thing. Just to concretize that, I want to give you an example from one of my companies. We were doing aluminum extrusion to make high technology baseball bats and bicycle frames and things like that. We had a new kind of aluminum. It was really cool. It was going to grow. It was going to revolutionize everything. But we had to go to existing aluminum companies and say, can you take our material and run it through your system? And they all smiled and said yes. But the problem was we were such a small piece of their business, and it was so hard dealing with our problems that we had to manage that thing. And so different ways to manage this issue is to develop close relationships, be on site, find multiple vendors, a plan B, and incentivize the partner to have an interest in your thing. So that's just a little piece about implementing your value chain. Eventually, if you want to talk about this in more detail, there's lots of other things we can talk about. And I'm just going to throw some topics out to you. We could talk about global supply chain management and all the cultural issues of working with vendors in different countries. Contracts, letters of credit, insurance, risk, all that kind of stuff. Cash flow management, developing trust with your partners, negotiating. There's lots of other operational issues that we can talk about. But before we can talk about how to manage your value chain, you have to derive value from the creation of the value chain in the first place. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you in Module 5.6, or if we do a deep dive later on in the value chain management topics, we'll be giving you some more details on these topics. Thanks for watching.